All right, I am going to transport you to another world. It was my world for nearly 2 decades. And I want to take you inside the emotional world of poverty, not to elicit empathy or sympathy or even guilt, but just to show you what that world is really like. All right, in the animated movie Inside Out, which was one of my favorites, a young girl named Riley overcomes a wide range of emotions as she navigates her world of change. My life story, though most people know the basketball side of it only, was an emotional roller coaster ride too. And this is common in generational poverty, and it shaped me from the outside in. What I'm about to share is covered in greater detail in my latest book, Sociopshychonomics, How Social Classes Think, Act, and Behave Financially in the 21st Century. For 18 years, I grew up in the roughest, the toughest, the baddest, the meanest housing project here in Central Ohio, Sullivan Gardens Housing Projects. My wife, I was dating her at the time, she was my girlfriend, she visited with me, and she says, there's no way, it's not possible that you can actually be from an environment like this. And I said, I am. And the thing that was so ironic about Sullivan Gardens was all of the streets were named after U.S. presidents: Van Buren, McKinley, Pierce, Coolidge, my street, Buchanan. They promoted liberty and freedom. We, of course, lived in economic bondage. For 10 years, right, growing up in this environment, 18 years growing up in this environment, there were 10 people that I grew up with who were either murdered, bam, or committed suicide. 10 that I grew up with, checked out. It's not a video game. You can't press reset and start over. Still many others who were trapped in a literal or imaginary prison. Many still in prison to this day, the prison of their mind. I grew up in a house full of women. That was rough, growing up in a house full of women. You see me there in the middle, right? I got my pink on. Real men wear pink. I got a smile on my face. My other 2 sisters just looking like, what's going on here? 3 older sisters, single-parent mom. Growing up in that environment, my sisters, they used to make me play with doll babies. They would put lipstick on me and perfume on me. It's all good. I turned out okay. It's all good. It's all good. Our family of 5, we received $300 a month on welfare. That's what we received. I'm not against welfare. I'll never be against welfare, but welfare should be a temporary measure, not a generational birthright. Fear. The first emotion is fear. All kinds of fears exist. The fear of being violated, the fear of being falsely or wrongly accused, the fear of getting robbed or assaulted, or the fear of seeing someone, a loved one, right in front of you die an earlier tragic death. All kinds of fears exist in poverty. My biggest fear was for someone to see me with the food stamp. To this day, I carry a food stamp around as a constant reminder of what poverty was really like, a debilitating condition to grow up in poverty. And I remember going to the grocery store. I would be in the line, ready to check out, and someone from my neighborhood would walk through the door, and my heart would it sank. And I would get out of the line, and I would walk around as though I forgot something from my list. And I would wander around. I knew every item in the grocery store. I waited for that person or those people to leave because I never wanted anyone to see me with food stamps. I never wanted anyone to see me poor. And it's the same fear that drives me to this day, the bridge, the growing wealth gap that exists in our country. And obviously, I need all the help I can get, and by the grace of God, I will. The next emotion is anger. Anger is obviously a very toxic, a very debilitating emotion in poverty. Sometimes you can have righteous anger. Sometimes you're angry and you don't even know why you're angry. I know for me is I didn't like the fact that I felt that people treated me like I was invisible, like my life didn't matter, like I was the scum of the earth. People will walk right past you with utter contempt as though your life is just worthless. And I remember some folks in my neighborhood, they would tell me, they'd say, Lawrence, you ain't never going to be nothing but a poor kid from the projects. You ain't never getting out of here. No way you're getting out of here. And I say, be very, very careful what you say, your actions, because you never know, whether intentional or innocent, how they can negatively scar someone for the rest of their life. And in poverty, anger is currency in the form of revenge. You pay people back because they hurt you. It's not right, but that's what you do. And as a man of faith now, I deeply regret some of the things that I did, because when I became a somebody as this sports figure, I wanted to pay them back, because when I was a nobody, when I was a poor kid, I said, I want to pay people back because you didn't care about me then. Why do you care about me now? And retribution is very common. All we need to do is look into our inner city communities, look into our prisons, and we see this play out. You have a right to be angry, but you don't have a right to execute judgment on people who had nothing to do with your childhood pain. This has been a painful lesson I've had to learn through the years. Disgust. Sullivan Gardens, that environment, I never wanted anyone to see where I lived. There were a couple guys who went to this school here, Michael Cooper and Cecil Gook. I never wanted those guys to see where I live. I never wanted anyone to come face to face with poverty. It's one thing to hear about poverty, but it's another thing to actually see it and smell it up close and personal. And I was one of the top 3 high school players in the country. Every college coach wanted me. Not one college coach ever visited with me and my mom in our housing project. I never wanted them to come inside and see our mismatched furniture. I never wanted them to see the deplorable living conditions that I had to endure each and every day. And as the youngest of 4, I had the distinction of having to take the trash out. I didn't have a choice, of course. And as you see the picture of the trash cans, oftentimes there's actually more trash outside the dumpsters than what was actually in the dumpsters. And you would see dirty diapers, you would see liquor bottles, you would see pop bottles, you would see milk cartons, you would see all these things. And obviously with one hand I had the trash bag, and I'm stepping over these items. And then with my other hand, I'm covering my nose, I'm plugging my nose, and I throw the trash because I never wanted to have that stench and then smell it. Now that stench is still on me to this day. I never want to forget about poverty. That stench is as much a part of my DNA as my 6'9" height and the color of my skin as a black man. It's who I am. It will always be a part of me. Sadness. A lot of sad moments in poverty. A lot of heartache, a lot of grief. Intense sadness is depression. And Lord knows I had to overcome it on many occasions. And my heart was broken. My father, like a lot of kids, inner city, African American, grew up without a father. He crushed me. He crushed me. And my mom, she would tell me, she would say, son, she would say, your father's coming to see you. I'm like, really? He's coming to see me? And I would wait outside all day. I wouldn't go outside and play. I would wait outside. And I would wait, and I would look outside. He never showed up. He never showed up. I'm your son. And you do me like this? In those rare moments when he would show up, he was an alcoholic. He was drunk. Never gave the satisfaction of being sober. He was an alcoholic. He'd take me to the corner store and buy me some candy. I hate candy to this day. Buy me some candy. I run to the candy aisle. He runs to the adult beverage cooler to buy a 40-ounce of malt liquor, OD. I hate that smell. Most of my candy had to go back on the shelf to pay for his liquor. I'm riding a car with an inebriated man who just so happens to share one half of my DNA. What does a son say to a father that he doesn't know? What does a father say to a son that he doesn't want? A lot of unanswered questions in poverty. And my son's in the back here. And he asked me, he said, Daddy, how come your father didn't love you? And I can't answer that question. He died at the age of 40. He cared more about that bottle than about the emotions that were bottled up inside of me. Did I go to his funeral? Absolutely not. Surprise or shock. Our housing project was nicknamed Madison Square Gardens. If you know anything about Madison Square Gardens, you know it's a lot of action there. A lot of action in our neighborhood, but mostly on the bad side. Sullivan Gardens had a recreation center, and we were hosting a softball game that one fateful day in the summer. I was about 9 years of age. I was a spectator just watching the game, and I don't know why this visiting recreation center, an all-white team, wanted to come inside of Sullivan Gardens, because they obviously didn't get the memo that even when you're invited into Sullivan Gardens, you're still not welcome if you're an outsider. So we had some guys on our team who were too old to be playing. Nobody was going to stop them, of course, from playing in the game, and they were smacking home runs left and right over the fence. And then after the game, they gave that team a beat down and a smack down and a stomp down. And this next moment scarred me for the rest of my life. There was a guy who had nothing to do with the game. He was just watching, but he wanted to participate in some format. He grabs a baseball bat. He picks it up. The coach on the other team, a muscular white guy, he picks it up, and the guy's like, please, don't do this. Please, as a plea bargain, as a goodwill gesture, he said, please, don't, please. And he swings as hard as he could, and he smacks the guy on the side of the head. He's bleeding, but I thought he would be bleeding a lot more, and I thought the blow was going to kill him. And he's staggering all over the place, staggering. You know, you have that gut feeling sometimes when you say, man, something bad's going to happen. You know how you have that feeling? I knew something bad was going to happen. And I didn't stick around to see the end of it. And I run all the way home, sprint all the way home. Sprint was about 100 yards from the softball field. I run through my door, up the steps, and I do a swan dive on my bed. And I tell myself, I got to get out of here. I got to get out of this torture. Lest you think otherwise, there were some happy moments. Not many, but there were some. And most people know me as a basketball player, but nothing ever brought as much joy to me as academics. Being in an institution like here of higher learning, I couldn't control the clothes that I wore, how bummy I look. I couldn't control whether or not I have enough food in my stomach, but I could control those thoughts, that knowledge that I could place up here in my brain. I controlled that with a religious fervor. And I felt, even as a poor kid, I had no equal. Poor kids, middle-class kids, rich kids, I had no equal intellectually. And people thought I was arrogant as a basketball player in a classroom. I was really cocky. And you see this gym bag up here. Obviously, some of you probably play sports or did back in the day. Have a basketball, okay? But mostly in poverty, you carry this gym bag around. Disgust, anger, sadness. You carry it around with excuses. Some of them are legitimate. But I have a question to ask you. It's a wait a minute question. How many of you have ever thought what it's like to live in an environment of lack, of stress, where you never know when your next meal is going to come? You don't know even if you're going to get home that day because of the violence. How many of you have ever taken the time to think about kids like me, grew up just like me, what that life is really like in poverty? As again, not guilt, but just to be aware. I want to thank you for your time. May God bless each and every one of you. Thank you.